My name is Erin Yates. I am a Title I teacher at Lowell Elementary School. I will be presenting my findings on the impact of phonics instruction on the fluency rate of first grade students. I chose this topic to research because fluency rate is my school district's current measure of reading proficiency as measured by FAST, the Formative Assessment System for Teachers. Phonics instruction is the current instructional focus in order to increase fluency rate, and I wanted to test its validity. The impact is widespread, with reading test results reporting 65% of fourth grade students scored below proficiency level and not reading at grade level. And according to the U.S. Department of Education, 2 out of 3 students are failing to achieve proficiency in reading as measured by the NAEP reading assessment. There are several interventions that have been used to improve fluency. The top-down approach is an intervention where students are to naturally make meaning while engaged in books and language-rich environments. Readers recognize words by making predictions that are built on background knowledge and context. This intervention does not use any direct literacy instruction, and teachers do not establish a foundation for reading. The bottom-up approach is an intervention where there is direct and explicit instruction of 5 reading components students must master that consist of phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and reading comprehension. A 4-year experimental study of the top-down and bottom-up approach was conducted, and the findings from this study showed the bottom-up intervention has the highest impact on the lowest level reading processes and was the cause for a reading spurt in children at risk from ages 7 to 8. Read 180 is a Scholastic Incorporated product that uses a mixed method approach, a mixture of direct instruction, computer-based lessons, and independent reading, and there was no substantial impact on students' reading fluency rate. Lastly, the phonics intervention is a system of teaching reading that builds on the alphabetic principle. Children progress through a sequence of phonics skills that are taught explicitly and systematically as they learn to read and spell. A study followed 10 schools over 18 weeks and found substantial positive treatment effects, with kindergartners reading 13 more words per minute on passage reading fluency. Studies featuring phonics instructions have focused mainly on lower level processing of reading development, letter ID, and word identification. This overlooks how phonics instruction can increase reading fluency, a reading model where mastery and decoding is followed by fluency. Therefore, a gap in research exists with a lack of quantitative research exploring the impact explicit phonics instruction has on the fluency rate of first grade students. The purpose of this study was to determine what impact phonics instruction has on the fluency rate of first grade students. Using the BLAST Foundation's phonics program and the Formative Assessment System for Teachers, also known as FAST, to measure students' oral reading fluency rate. The hypothesis that first grade students who receive 25 minutes of explicit phonics instruction each day for 6 weeks would show higher reading fluency scores as compared to students who participated in the typical literacy curriculum. The independent variable being the daily phonics instruction and the dependent variable being the fluency rate as measured by FAST. The experimental research is to determine the impact of phonics instruction on fluency rate of first grade students. The results of this study can be used to help teachers make instructional decisions about phonics instruction. In the educational field, there is a lot of focus on reading proficiency, and this would provide evidence of a successful intervention for people to refer to. My work as a practitioner will be impacted by how much phonics instruction I include in the interventions that I create and how I select interventions in the future. An experimental design was used because I wanted to observe the impact phonics instruction has compared to the normal literacy curriculum. I used first grade students from 2 intact classrooms, 26 total students from 2 classes of similar demographics. There were 27% male, 73% female, 32% both Caucasian and African American, 23% Hispanic, 12% Asian, 1% Pacific Highlander, 46% were ELL students, and 1% had an IEP. All students are free and reduced meals, both breakfast and lunch. Blast Foundations was the phonics program used for the experimental group. This included passages, student workbooks, letter tiles, whiteboards. And the FAST formative assessment system for teachers was used to track and monitor the data. The experimental group received daily 25-minute phonics instruction for 6 weeks. Data was monitored weekly and analyzed at the conclusion of the 6-week intervention. An independent samples t-test was used to compare 2 groups on both a pre- and post-test. Results showed that the experimental group outperformed the control group on the Fluency post-test. However, findings did not support the hypothesis that using phonics, the phonics instructional method versus a traditional literacy method, increased scores in the skill area of reading fluency. The p-value was greater than the alpha level of 0.05. However, findings did show a higher mean score for the experimental group compared to the control group. Pre-test score showed a 2.31 difference, and the post-test score showed a 15.23 difference. The experimental group did outperform the control group by approximately 25% in 6 weeks. The results of this study are consistent, although not scientifically significant, with past research suggesting reading fluency may be influenced by phonics instruction. Timothy Rosinsky, a professor of literacy education, suggests that both phonics and fluency must be explicitly taught to those readers who lack decoding skills and have not yet reached proficiency in reading fluency. In this study, students were explicitly taught phonics skills such as letter and vowel sounds, segmenting, blending sounds, and fluency practice daily. Phonics and fluency were also taught simultaneously, supporting students in linking these 2 reading skills. Research also suggests that phonics instruction may have a beneficial effect on the fluency rate of children from varying abilities and backgrounds. And the students in this study did range in backgrounds. The experimental group included 11 ELL students, and the control group included 1. Most of these students began learning to speak English in kindergarten, and English is not spoken or practiced in the home. Phonics was able to help these students learn the English alphabet and the sounds, and helped in their reading and speaking pronunciation, especially with new vocabulary. The findings from this study fit with the bottom-up theory, which suggests that children learn to read by working through a series of isolated skills taught in sequential order. The students in the experimental group were explicitly taught foundational skills in a systematic sequence. Students learned to pay attention to every word, read with a high rate of accuracy, and use strategies to decode unfamiliar words daily. The findings from this research impact students in significant ways. Students gain valuable decoding strategies. They are able to comprehend at higher levels, develop reading comprehension. Decoding skills become automatic, allowing for focus of meaning of a story, and high enthusiasm and engagement in learning with hands-on and collaborative activities. The findings from this study impact teachers in many ways, including the assessment data is used to drive instruction. Teachers can connect the same reading strategies to reading in other academic areas. Effective and focused collaboration with families, administrators, teachers, and students, with discussions focused on reading fluency, and phonics is easily differentiated to match different levels of learners. It can be taught whole class, small group, and one-on-one. The pretest mean score of both groups were relatively the same, with only a 2.31 point difference. The post-test, the experimental group did outperform the control group by a mean difference of 15.23 points in just 6 weeks. This improvement can be attributed to the phonics intervention, Other than this intervention, teachers instructed the same core material each day. Given the students in this study were from 2 different classrooms, the teaching style and expectations might have impacted the results, as well as the maturity level of the first graders may have also been part of what impacted the results. Students did range in age from 5 to 7. In this study, the pretest was a significant part of the process to give the researcher a starting point in order to determine growth. Pre and post tests need to be aligned so students will be familiar with the format. And this research could inform other studies on the same topic, as it does suggest phonics instruction impacts fluency. There are, of course, limitations to the current study that should be taken into consideration. Time was a limitation. The 6-week time frame made it difficult to measure change over time. The duration of past research suggests that effective interventions range from 8 to 16 weeks. For future research, I would suggest to lengthen the duration of the intervention from 8 to 16 weeks in order to measure change over time. Sample size was a limitation. This study used 26 students in total, comparing 13 students from 2 classrooms. Convenient sampling was used on 2 intact classrooms, only choosing 13 students from each. It was difficult to generalize the results to ensure that the sample size is considered representative of a population. The results could also vary with different populations in different geographic areas. For future research, I suggest including full classrooms of students for a larger sampling, include multiple grade levels, multiple schools, and in general just use a larger sample size to gain better insight. The environment was also a limitation. The participants could be affected by the location they are in during the testing. The distractions in the classroom may alter their reading fluency. For future research, I would suggest testing should take place in the same location for each student with limited distractions by testing in a quiet location. In conclusion, this study does suggest that the fluency rate of first grade students is slightly, although not significantly, influenced by explicit phonics instruction. Research points to the potential value of phonics instruction as a form of enrichment and intervention for students. This study was conducted on a very small group of first grade students over a short period of time. Further research is needed to determine the long-term effects of explicit phonics instruction on a larger number of students before generalized conclusions can be made. Thank you very much.